Hi again, Stephanie with the patient story for our third and final segment with Stephen, who just got done detailing his targeted therapy treatment. And Stephen, you're such a success story, inspiration, whatever you want to call it. And I know you have, topics that are important to you as an advocate. And so I thought we could start with advocacy. You talked about it before, and that in the beginning, you didn't feel that you were a self advocate. Can you describe a little bit more in depth about why you think that is people are like that and what people can do to get over that, to put themselves first?
Absolutely. I think that we fall into the mindset. Sometimes we fall into the mindset that that this can't happen to us, or that's not going to happen to me. And I know for me personally, as somewhat of a self-defense mechanism, when you read about people that are dealing with severe diseases or other things, anything really, I tend to distance myself. I put up this halo. I say, well, that's not going to happen to me. That's not me. And so when I started to become symptomatic, uh, I immediately thought, well, nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. And I kept telling myself that and over and over and over. But I knew deep down that something was just a little off in my body. And I think that if I had swallowed my pride, if I had not been afraid of what the actual diagnosis or prognosis would have been, then I feel like I could have probably given myself a little bit better of a position in dealing with lung cancer. I is like we talked about earlier. When I could remember those first symptoms, I think about that a lot. What if at that time it was still early stage? What if it was stage 1 or stage 2 and it was operational? How would that have changed everything? Of course, you can drive yourself crazy doing that as well. So don't take that with a grain of salt. But the most important advice that I can give anyone in regards to advocacy is nobody knows your body better than you. And so it's so important to seek out answers. And if you don't like the answers that you're getting, or they're not right, then try to find someone else. Walking out of the parking lot in January of that urgent care center, I knew I didn't have bronchitis. I knew something more was going on there. But at the time, I kind of I let the voice in the back of my head not speak up. And so if I can give you anyone advice out there, it's step up and find answers and don't give up.
Well said, Stephen. And I know that for you at the time, part of it was, look, you're like the cleanest bill of health. You're this, you have this professional athletic background, had always kept in shape. And, you're like, I'm not going to be a cancer patient. Like, how would that even occur to me, But, I think with lung cancer in particular, right, there are a lot of misconceptions, a lot of stigmas, and I'd love for you to go and just, crack them all wide open.
Absolutely. I love talking about it because as being a teacher, it gives me the opportunity to inform someone maybe that isn't aware of some of these stigmas. And when I was first diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, like you mentioned, in my own head, I thought I was the bill of health, right? I was 29 years old, and I had never, up to that point, I had always taken great care of my body. I had never, smoked or anything like that. So to get a cancer diagnosis was so shocking, but to get a lung cancer diagnosis was insane, completely out of left field. But I just assumed that because of my demographic and everything, that everyone would just know that it was a freak accident. Well, that wasn't necessarily the case. And what I mean by that is, typically when I share with someone about my journey with lung cancer, their first response is, well, did you smoke? And I have no problem with someone asking me that because it gives me the opportunity to educate. But I think that question, I think that presents a stigma. And what I mean by that is we have always been told as, general, population, we have always been told that you get lung cancer from smoking, and that smoking is the only cause of lung cancer. And if you don't want to get lung cancer, stop smoking or never smoke. And the reality is that between 30 and 40% of newly diagnosed lung cancer patients are either never smokers or they have quit for a long, extended amount of time. And so I think there's a couple different narratives that we need to change. One, we need to change the narrative that lung cancer is a smoker's disease. We need to address the fact that if you have lungs, you can get lung cancer. And even healthy, young, never non-smokers still get lung cancer. And the second narrative that we need to address is that no one deserves lung cancer. I mean, it sounds silly, but no one deserves any type of cancer, right? Even if someone does smoke, I don't think it's right as morally for me to say, well, they brought that on themselves. Because as you know, and as anyone that is in the health industry knows, yes, smoking or tobacco is the leading cause of lung cancer, but it's also the leading cause of other cancers and can contribute to other cancers and even other diseases such as cardiovascular diseases. But when you go in to get an EKG or you're a diabetic or all of these other things, you're not scrutinized, right? You're not asked whether you smoked or did you bring this on yourself. And so I think that the narrative needs to shift. And I think that we need to, as a human race, we need to empathize with, lung cancer patients. And we need to say, you know what, whether you smoked or not, doesn't matter. We just need to support you. And we need to understand that, lung cancer patients need research, need treatment options, just like every other cancer patient does.
Absolutely. I love that you broke that out into these two different, sort of subcategories, because you're right. There's the stigma attached to being a smoker for lung cancer. And at the same time, nobody deserves to be dealing with the horrific situation that is cancer. And, Stephen, you mentioned it. You were 29 when you were diagnosed. I was 30 or 31. I can't even remember now. It was a few years ago. But for you, as a young adult, how was it dealing with cancer? Did you find a community? Did you go on social media right away? Was that later? And any tips for people who are young and dealing with cancer?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I did was I scoured the internet trying to find some stories of hope. And I wanted to see someone beat lung cancer. And, it's hard. It's hard in our own lung cancer community to find those things, or it was maybe when I was first diagnosed. It's getting much better. And I think the reason being is because when you look at the statistics of lung cancer, specifically stage 4, late case or late stage, it's not very encouraging. And when I was diagnosed, I was told that the 5-year survival rate was about 16%. And so when I heard that, that was very discouraging for me. That was about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. Now it's already up to 21%, which is highly encouraging. It's still not, not where we want it, but it's great. And the reason is because of these new therapies, these new drugs. And so when I think about, a newly diagnosed patient and what advice that I could give them as far as finding a community, and there's a lot of great resources out there now for lung cancer that were not available when I was diagnosed. So finding those resources, which can be located on various different lung cancer nonprofits, but also finding a group or individuals, and for me that was through social media, that have walked the path. Because if I can see someone's done something, that gives me hope. If I can see someone's beat a cancer, or they've lived 5, 10, 15 years with a cancer, I can ask myself, oh, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And so, I think that speaks volumes to the mind, the mental game of beating cancer.
Absolutely. And you have become the story that people are looking for. And I'm so excited to put you up and spotlight your story, put you on the front page, and shout it from the rooftops. No, but really, it's
Very
true.
kind.
I think, yeah, people want to hear it, and your story is inherently positive. You don't sugarcoat anything. You're telling it like it is, but it's just inherently an inspirational story. I just have one more question for you before I open it up to you to wrap up. And then I will end with a picture. I want to show a picture of your cute baby. um, but you talked about this before as well, and you've touched on it several times. But the issue of survivorship is different for different people depending on the situation. You had mentioned you treat yours like a chronic illness, which I've heard from others before as well. But for those out there who haven't even started the process, I think it can sound daunting, right? It's like you had said before, easier to think of cancer as something you dig out or, put poison in and it dissipates or disappears. So what have you learned, I guess, through your experience about what survivorship means to you and how you mentally frame things to move forward?
Wow, that's such a great question. So one thing that I love to talk about in my journey is starting a family. You just mentioned it. Receiving my diagnosis, talking about my medication, my treatment option, the last thing on my mind was starting a family. And my oncologist, who I love dearly, said, Stephen, I want you to think about the option, or at least have the option, to start a family, because once we start this drug, you're not going to be able to start, at least naturally, have a family. And so I looked at her like she had three eyes. I was like, you really think that's what I'm thinking about right now? All I'm thinking about is living tomorrow. I just want to make it. So when my wife and I went home, we talked about it. We talked about it long and hard, and it was something that I did not have any interest in, but I am so grateful that we made the arrangements. So about 2 years into my journey with lung cancer, after several good, stable scans, life started to feel much more normal than I would have ever expected. And I think it's because when you are handed a diagnosis, your life just flips upside down. But doing things that got me back into a routine, and that, what I mean is work, traveling with my wife, doing family, get-togethers, going and doing things with my friends, slowly but surely, I started to feel normal again. And I got to a point 2 years in where I felt normal enough to explore the options of starting a family. And thankfully, I am so grateful that I did, because if I had been as stubborn as I was at my diagnosis and I didn't have someone advocating, then I might not have had the chance to make those arrangements. And we welcomed our son into the world scientifically through IVF in January. And he is healthy, he is happy, and he is the light of our worlds. And so survivorship to me is not letting cancer win. And what I mean is win, not necessarily winning by, where it's at in my body and if it's growing or not. I mean winning by taking away the joy that I want to live my life with. And in every second that I spend thinking about, what if, how's this going to affect me? What if this gets worse? What if I can't breathe? Is a second that I'm letting cancer win. And so by focusing on all of the things that I want to do in life and how I want to live and be a happy, loving father, be a happy, loving husband, and just be a joy in life is winning, and is survivorship to me. And so if I'm having a bad day or if I'm feeling down, get out of the house. I go do something. I hit the reset button, and it's okay to cry. I tell people that all the time. It's okay to feel bad and to cry, but you have to get out of it. You have to flip the switch. At some point, you have to stop feeling sorry for yourself, and you have to turn, you know, adversity into an opportunity. And so for me, I try to turn adversity into an opportunity to be a light and to share my story and to advocate for cancer and lung cancer specifically, and just live life to the fullest.
Well, thank you for doing that, because I have to say, it's hard finding those stories sometimes, especially men, who are coming out and talking about it. And yeah, yours is such a beacon of light, really, in that way. I've said it multiple times already in this interview. And your baby boy, by the way, is beautiful.
Thank you.
What's his name?
His name is Owen.
Owen.
So my name's Steven, and we gave Owen my middle name. So he's Owen Stephen Huff. And I got demoted to middle name, which I'm perfectly fine with. I'll take it. As long as I'm in there somewhere, I don't care.
You are. And, that's sometimes kids like to take the middle name. They're like, oh, just do this instead. So you never know.
Exactly. Being a teacher, trust me, I deal with that all the time.
Yeah, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure you have stories. So actually, you had mentioned something about the fertility preservation process, which we've spoken with women about. We've spoken with a couple guys about it too. But for you, just to be clear, when your oncologist brought that up, she was saying you should go sperm bank and
Yep.
just have that as an option, even though you're not thinking about that right now.
So that is correct. So when I was right before I started taking alectinib, my targeted drug, she said, my oncologist said, no, Stephen, if you want to eventually down the road start a family, you're not going to be able to do it while you're on the medication. And so I would highly recommend that you go to a fertility clinic and do the sperm bank. That way, at least you have the option down the road. And so that's when my wife and I went home and we discussed. I was not into the idea at all. That was the last thing on my mind. I was so angry. I couldn't even think about it. And then thankfully, I let it sink in for a few days. And I really just did it because my wife was advocating. She said, Steve, I know this is something that you don't want to think about right now, but I really think you should do it. And we did it. And so yeah, my son, I guess, is technically 3.5 years old ish, technically. And the really cool thing too about the IVF process, not to go into too many details, is when they create the embryos, we have multiple viable embryos, and so we actually still have a couple that down the road that if we decide to make another addition to the family, we still have that option.
And it's such a wonderful thing, right? To be able to just have that as almost an insurance policy, like it's there and it's reassuring. My husband and I went through the process as well, just in case, before I underwent treatment. So I hear everything you're saying. Owen's beautiful. And yeah, I'm so happy you started your family there, where you grew up to. It's like such a beautiful story. So the last thing is just open-ended for you. I'm going to bring up a picture of you, sharing your story at a rally, I believe it was, an event. Anything that you just want to leave as a last message for people?
Yeah, sure. My last message would be this. It would just be that for me personally, cancer, my cancer diagnosis in some kind of a weird, obscure way, I would say was a gift. And the only reason I would call it a gift, well, I wouldn't give it to anyone. Definitely wouldn't give it to anyone, or wouldn't wish it upon anyone else. But for me, it's been somewhat of a gift. And the only reason I say that is because it has helped me recognize and appreciate life much more so now than I ever did before I was diagnosed. And so for that, I am so grateful, because I try to live every day, as best that I can. And I think that my diagnosis has brought that out in me. And so I think for newly diagnosed or not, people that have never even been diagnosed, don't wait for something like that to happen to you, to live that way, to live the way that you want to live. And, I tell my kids every single day that we have a little saying that we put on the wall. It's corny and cliche, but it's so, so important to me. And it's 3 letters. It's A, I, and E, AIE. And it stands for attitude is everything. And to me, attitude is the most important thing in life, because if you have the right attitude, like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're probably right. And to me, that resonates so well, because attitude directs you in life, and how you view things gives you perspective, and it gives you the opportunity to look beyond your circumstances and to help others.
Ugh, I love what you just said. That's beautiful, and a great way to end this interview as sort of this last message for people if there's something they could take away. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us on the patient story. I look forward to putting your story up there and hopefully working with you again soon, because it doesn't feel like work. It's just being able to talk to someone who really is able to impart his own wisdom and experience that you've gone through. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Wonderful. Thank you.